Beginning current Daf, Mesech Chagigah Daf, begin 12 lines down the top of the Yomim, where the Gemara continues the discussion of our previous Mishnah, making different differentiations of Tahara between different types of people. As we said, there's Eichlei Chulin, Taharas HaKodesh, and then there's that of Meiser, and of Truma, and of Kodshim, and of Chatas. And our Daf continues with that theme regarding the Chilukim of an individual and how to keep something tar. Shir corresponds because patient of joining us for today's Daf. Some of this is discussing today's Daf are Hesach Hadas. If someone is stringent and only eats his chulin b'tahara, items are only considered tahar if he guards them from tumah intentionally. If he's distracted from the shmira, the object is automatically considered tameh, and our Gemara gives many different examples of that. The Gemara cites many cases and refers to the following principles. Ikka netirusa lapalga. There's a concept of partial guarding, which means that the object is guarded and that it shouldn't become tameh, but it's only going to be for a specific thing. So, for example, let's say it could be that the person guarded that it shouldn't become tummy, which we'll mention in a second what's the difference between tummy and puzzle, but it could be like a quasi, like a chatzi type of a shmir. Let's say someone is watching something with the presumption that it's one thing, it turns out it's really something else, that will still be, although it's on some level like a hesach hadas, it's not what you thought it was, it's still going to be considered tahar. We assume that a person is not going to guard an object that someone else is holding. Tameh pasal, what's the difference between those terminologies? Tameh is that the thing itself is tameh and it could be mitami something else. Pasal is that only it's invalidated. So for example, let's say you have a shlishi letruma. It's pasal, it's disqualified and you cannot eat it, but it's not going to be referred to as tameh because it cannot make anything else tameh, that it's only going to be pasal itself. So begin the current Daf Chaf, and we give it 12 lines down to the top of the Yomim. I'm going to begin this in bin Elazar. Says, Nafla ma'afartei himenu. Let's say the kerchief, a sudar, falls off from a person. Okay. Amal chaveroi tells his friend, Tunali, give it to me. But Noslan, he gives it to him. Somebody playing baseball and the kappalet falls off, he's on first base, he has his hand over his head, says, pass me my sudar. He gives it to him, Tameya. This kappalet, this sudar is tameh, even if this person is tar. Why would that be? So the Gemara later on is going to explain, there's a chazaka, there's a presumption that a person does not guard what's in his friend's hand. So the guy on first base, he's not watching what his friend is holding. Now the one also that picked it up, he's also not concerned to guard it, because he says, since he told me, give it to me, he doesn't know if I'm tameh, if I'm tar, so obviously he's not concerned for his tahara. So there's hesach hadas, no one's paying attention to this item. Now, for those who are machmer in taharas, hesach hadas it's automatically as tummy. So this guy's kappalich, this guy's sudar automatically became tummy by the fact that he asked this other guy to pick it up from him and give it to him. Similarly, Amr bin Amr says, "Neschafa lekelim shel Shabbos." He must bring many examples of this concept. Neschafa lekelim shel Shabbos bekem shecha. The guy made a mistake. He thought to take his wochendige kapata, or whatever, some long gedekel, and he took the Shabbos one, and he puts it on. Belovshan. It's a nitmu. It becomes tameh. So the Gemara originally assumes what that means to say is because he holds that he thinks that because he's protecting something, presuming it's one thing, turns out it's something else, that's not protecting, obviously. You're not guarding, you're not watching it, that it shouldn't become tameh because it's the wrong thing. So obviously you didn't do a proper shimur. So therefore it's going to be automatically considered as tameh.
The one who was just putting on, or the one is also heavy because the both really should go involved.
Right. He were told, right, the child is what does it mean? But it sounds like the one he took out and the way he's handling it, that he's not careful with watching it, right? What does that mean? What's and in the closet it is shamar. So that becomes tameh. So on another case, a third case, Amr bin Elazar bar Tzaddik. He said, "Ma'aseh v'shtei nashim chaveros." It was a story with two women that were friends. Sheneschafel and kileim beves hamerchetz, and their clothing got mixed up in the bathhouse. The story came from Rekiva, and by mistake she put on her blouse. She put on ours, the same one, same store, same size. And Kiva said that they're going to be tameh. Again, the same idea, where obviously you weren't shomer alav because you had taken the wrong one. Although they're both chaveros, they're both women that are careful in the laws of Tara, it doesn't make a difference. the fact that you had the wrong one. These are three similar cases of this idea. Now, Boisha asks on these teachings. If that's the case, what's with the following case? If let's say someone sticks his hand into a basket, little paschiten, the dark kumsitz, and he's sticking in his hand to take out a bread of wheat. Also the pasarm, and he takes out the barley bread. Where you think it's going to become tamei, meaning it's not what you wanted, so automatically you weren't being shomer love, and it becomes tamei. And Bechitem, it begins to say, yeah, if that's what you wanted one thing, you took the wrong thing, you obviously weren't being shomer for what you wanted, that becomes tamei. But Tani B'lin, the Brisa, that seems to contradict this. Because the Brisa says like this: Hameshamer es achavis, someone is protecting a barrel, b'cheskel shel yain. He's presuming that it's wine. He's watching it, he wants to make sure it stays tahar, he wants to keep out taras hakodesh. V'nitzis shel shemen. Turns out it's not even wine, it's oil. It's gemach tatuas. Says the Brisa, still tahirim el tameh. It's still pure from becoming tameh. Because the mice, you protected. Who cares that it was oil instead of wine? So that contradicts the concept we were saying all along, that even though these women and these people are watching the kapelich, the blouse, whatever this is, but because they made a mistake, it wasn't what they thought it was, it becomes tameh. So it seems to be clearly contradicted in the Brisa. So the Gemara responds and says, wait a second. According to your reasoning that you're asking on us from this Brisa, but look at the end of the Brisa. The Brisa says, Basur milachol, but you're not allowed to eat it. Huh? Amai. Why wouldn't you be able to eat it? If you tell me that you protected it from becoming tamei, you should be allowed to eat that oil. Obviously, you see that it is problematic because you watched it thinking it's wine, it turns out it's oil. Avada Rabbi Yirmi says, no. This that you're asking, that Ema Seifa, why is it us to eat? That won't help you at all. That won't take away the question that we're asking. Because that's Ba'omer, and again, there's a lot of cheshbon over here, a little bit back and forth. Ba'omer, it's where the person said, Shemartia, I protected it, Midavar HaMetama'ah, says, I'm only watching, I made sure that nothing is going to make it tameh, but let me Midavar HaPaisla, but not from something that's going to make it puzzle. Now, something is puzzle means to say that it is tameh, but it cannot be tameh other things. So you cannot eat this oil because it became tameh, but it's not going to be tameh other things because that is what you did watch it. So yes, you can't eat it because it did become puzzle. Puzzle means it's the last of the line of it becoming tameh, but you did protect it from becoming tameh. So you see that is a valid shmira, and that's why it's not going to become tameh, even though it's not what you thought it was. You thought it was wine, and it turns out it's really oil. So you see, not like the principle that the daf started off with all the three different cases that you mixed up. It's not a good shmira. You see, not like that. You see, it is a good shmira. What's with the seifa? You want to protect yourself, saying, you want to defend. That's not true. The seifa is because you didn't watch it for something that's going to make it possible. You only protect it for something that's going to make it tameh. So the question is still alive and kicking. But the Gemara first asks on what we just said. You're telling me that you're resolving the Brisa, that why I don't have a good way of rejecting the Brisa that you're asking from me from the Reisha. By telling you what do you do with the Seifa, because you're saying, no, the Seifa is talking about where the guy was not watching you from Dava HaPaisa, he was only watching from Dava Shabbat. So the Gemara is saying, if you're a halfway Shemitah, you're telling me he watched it only from this, but not from that, and that's going to work? Says the Gemara, yes. But Tanya, I'll bring your Brisa that supports this. Someone sticks his hand into a basket of figs, and the basket is on her shoulder. Now, Magrefa is like a metal iron tool that they usually used for shoveling out the ashes from the stove. But they also use this to separate figs. Figs are very sticky, and they have sometimes these cakes of figs that they get stuck one on the other. So you take this tool, like the scraper, that you would scrape the ashes out of the oven. You also use it to cut and separate the figs. So there's this magrefa, this shovel, b'toich asal, in the basket. Now, he had in mind to protect the basket, to guard the basket, but he had nothing in mind to guard the shovel. So what's the halacha? And he stuck his hand into the basket. So the halacha is that hasal tahar, the basket is tahar, because that's what he was guarding. And the shovel is going to be tummy. So you see, whatever he guarded it from, which was the basket, it's going to remain tar. What he didn't have in mind to guard, which was the shovel, is going to become tummy. That's what the main idea that the Gemara wants from this brisa.
It's not the same exact.
What?
I mean, that means you guarded one item and you didn't guard the other item.
Right.
Maybe we're talking about the same item for two different purposes.
Right. What would that would be?
It's the same
Yeah.
item.
Right. I mean, you point out that there is a difference in the Chanami. Shaila is if that would make it a difference that the Gemara, why the Gemara gives us an answer that it's not a Neturus Lapalga, because it's two different items. Okay. So the Gemara asks and says, wait a second. First of all, how do we understand the Brisa? You tell me Hasal Tar, the basket is Tar, but the Tami Hamakare for Lasal. If you tell me that the shovel that you didn't guard is Tame, so why doesn't that shovel make the basket Tame? Says Gemara, no, Ein Kli, that's not an Av, Mitame Kli. A vessel that's not an Av, which is what this is, because if anything with the Yadayim or whatever, it's not, the Rishonim discuss exactly what is making this Tame, but either way, this Kli is not an Avatama. So this shovel is not going to be Tame Kli, another Kli. So the shovel, although it's Tame, is not going to make the basket Tame. Okay, but then the Gemara has a different question, which the Rishonim also discuss about how do we know what's with the figs. No one mentioned anything about the figs. But the Gemara asks, V'latame masha b'sal. At least we didn't say that the figs are Tame. We only mentioned that the shovel became Tame. But why didn't you say that you're only protecting the basket? But then why didn't we say what's in the basket? The figs themselves should also become Tame. Why are we saying only the shovel is Tame? So Ravina says, no, it's Ba'ima where he says, Shemartiv, I did guard the shovel. But, and this is actually where it seems like the real teretz of Lapalga is, which is what we were saying, that we see this elsewhere. It's in this case.
The same thing, you cannot make
A food can become a sheni.
From a kli.
Yeah, food can become a sheni, but a kli cannot become a sheni. So it's midavar shemitame, and this is again that lapalga here. It's in the item itself. I protected it from something that would make it tame, meaning that makes it tame to be mitame other things, but let me do about place like. But not from something that makes it invalid. So this is mamash lapalga, like we said, that the shovel is going to become tamei because you guarded it from dava hamatam. It's going to become tamei because you didn't protect it from dava hapoisle. So why doesn't it make the figs tamei? Because I protected from davar hamatame. So that's mamash the yisod that we're saying that obviously if the figs are tahar, you see there is a shmir lapalga that the reason why the shovel is tamei is because you didn't protect from dava paisle. But the reason why the figs are tar is you didn't protect from dava hamatama, because if you did, then the figs should be tama.
What would be a case of place like a shlishi?
Oh, so Taisus has this question. Rabbi Chana asks, he says, how exactly did this magrefa become possible? If it's a rishon or a sheni, but adam mekim cannot become a tuma, but from an avatuma. And if it's an avatuma, so it's not possible, it's tame.
And it's not going to be tama echel mashkan either after the sheni, unless you go backwards.
Which case? No, it can't be. In other words, it can't be a sheni because and if it's an avatama, so it's not possible. It's tame. It should make. So Taisus says, right? It's Taisus says that we're talking about with the kli. This shovel as a kli became possible from mashkin. Mashkin is a very unique halacha that mashkin tamein could paisel a kli, even though generally no liquid or food item could be. That's exeded rabbanon. We're going to see this later on. The Gemara says there's a nida that a chayri kelim that became tum from mashkin that actually makes the kli into a sheni. It's an exception because the mashkin becomes a rishon, and there's a chiddush. It's a fana. It's a oisnam that you say such a thing. But that's the unique halacha. We have reasons why, because it can be confused with the liquid of a zat, whatever. But al kapan the kli becomes a sheni, and therefore it's possible because not going to be a food item because a chulin cannot become a shlishi. So that's the case that we're saying that you protected it from dava hamatamai, but v'lema dava hapoisloi. So what's the significance of that if the shovel is tamei? So either it means to say that you cannot use it with tyrus like a tchila, because what's the problem? So it's tummy, so what's the difference? It's not passing on the tummy to anything else. What's the problem if the shovel is tummy? So Rashi says in Chiddush that even so, the Ketchila you wouldn't use it for taharas, even though it cannot make anything else tamei. Or another nafkamina says, let's say you have food, let's say you have some figs, or whatever, stuck to that shovel, that would be possible achila because that was part of the shovel. It's like a tuffle to that. So that's the Chiddush in that halacha. But one thing is we see that if it would touch taharas, it would not invalidate it. So this is what we said. This you see Niturus Lapalka, that you see that this shovel, this magrefa, was protected from becoming tamei, but not from becoming pasul. And that's how we'll explain the brayse that we mentioned before, and therefore the brayse does make sense. And therefore the Gemara continues and says, so we're back to the question. We said that if you protect something with the presumption that it's something else, it is going to be tar from becoming tamei. It's not like we start off the daf with 3 different cases that we said that no, it doesn't help when you're protecting it, thinking it's something else, and that's going to become tamei. The brayse says clearly that if you have this barrel that you think it's wine, it turns out it's oil, it's going to be tamei. And we had a whole discussion. I wouldn't do it. The Seifa, we took care of that. And the answer we gave, we also had difficult, we took care of that too. So we're back to the question. We're saying, you see, that if you protect it, think it's one thing, and then something else, it's going to be tar. We said, why is it itself? You can't eat it. That's we said, because you didn't protect it from becoming pasul, you didn't protect it from becoming tamei. And then we got in discussion, says, can you watch it halfway? Said, yes, and that we proved. We said that we saw a case that is a shovel. We discussed, well, why can't the shovel make the basket tamei? And why won't the shovel make the figs tamei? We took care of that. But akaban, you see that you could protect it from davar matamei, but a bit of a paislay. But akapan, the ratio of the brayse said, presuming it's one thing, protecting something else, is going to make it shomer. That's not like all the cases we start off the daf with. V'oid, moreover, says the Gemara, Moisiv Rabbi Baravua. He asks also from a brayse, Tesefta, that says, Moisiv Isha Acha Shabaslam Nei Bishmal. Story with a woman that came from the Bishmal. Normally she said to him, Rebbe, Beged Zeh Adarktiv B'Tahara. This garment, we wove it in a state of purity. In other words, I know that from the moment this garment was woven 3 by 3 finger breadths, which is then it's considered beged, where it's fit to become tamei, nothing tama touched it. But she did put out the disclaimer, but I didn't have in mind to guard in the state of tar. Meaning, I know, but I wasn't being shomer alav. Now, but with all the different investigations the Bishmal was checking into, because he was telling her, look, you didn't have in mind to guard it. Maybe this happened, maybe this happened, maybe that happened, maybe you weren't careful. You know that nothing happened, but if you weren't being shomer, who knows what could have happened? And in all the questions, Amalei, she said to him, oh, Rabbi, it is interesting. Nida mashcha mi bechevel. There was a menstruating woman who was pulling with me the rope, meaning there's the rope that's tied onto the vessel that's being woven. Maybe she pulled the rope, and that's caused it to move, and that would create the tumah of hesed of the garment. So Rabbi Shmuel says, how great are the words of the sages. That they said, if someone has in mind to guard it, tar. Does not have in mind to guard it, tamei is going to be tamei. Where you see that she didn't realize, she's like, yeah, no one touched it, but the woman that was Anida, that the rope was tied onto the tools of the weaving, she might have caused that to move, and then you have the tumah hesed on the garment. So even though
this would have happened even if she would have been shomer it.
No, if she's being shemer, she's making sure that no one that.
Yeah, but she still thought that it was tumah.
Right. She said no one touched it. She said.
She said,
Right. No, but she said beged adakti, but I wove it in the state of purity, which is correct. She did weave it in the state of purity, but she didn't make sure that all the different elements out there will be to make sure it's not going to make it tamei. So this neither didn't weave it; she wove it, but she had this maid who was helping out, just pulling the rope, and that caused it. But that's because she wasn't shomer, because she wasn't being extra careful. So that's what Rabbi Shmuel was saying. How great are the words of the sages? Although, nothing happens. Think about it. Like you weren't guarding, you weren't being so conscious of it. You'd be surprised what there might have been over there, and he actually found out that there was a situation that made it tummy. As Shumai Shachas, another story with a woman. Shavas came in front of Rabbi Shmuel. Amrullah, she said to me, Rebbe, Mapazu, this cloth, I wove it in the state of purity. I made it from an einikel. I made this blanket, and my son is such a frumnak. He's everything has to be b'tahara. Chab b'skemach b'tahara. She wanted the Rav's psak. Now, but I believe in the shomer. But I didn't have in mind. I wasn't guarding it for a state of purity. But I did it in a state of purity. But with all the questions and all the analysis that he asked, Amalesh said to him, "Oh, Rebbe, it's interesting. Nima nifsikali. There was a thread that before I even wove anything, there was a thread that became detached. And I knotted it with my mouth, meaning before anything was woven, it wasn't even fit to become tummy. I wasn't careful then, and at that point I was still a nida. Meaning when I started doing the actual garment, the weaving, meaning I was already chamshain tlevel giving. Now the problem is what you have to be concerned is that maybe once it was woven an amount of 3 finger breadths, maybe the spit that she had was still moist, and the spittle of a nida is an avatum. So even though when she was weaving, she was tar, but maybe that what she had spun, and then she, with her mouth, she went and she knotted it, which was the spit is in the mouth, that's considered tummy. That's how Rashi likes. He brings another pshat which places is Mayrachon, that he said, Rashi brings from his teachers that it's because of a tzinoidus ama'aretz. B'chalal we say the pipe, meaning the anything that liquids are coming from ama'aretz is going to be mitam as long as it's moist. But Rashi says that obviously this woman was not an ama'aratza. She was obviously a chaveda, because if she wasn't a chaveda, you think she would come in front of the rabbis to ask for garment taharas? And also, you think we would believe her to say that she had woven it in a state of purity? She'll be it as it may, but Amri Bishmol says, how great are the words of the sages? That they said, believe the shamer tar. If you had a mind to guard it, it's going to be tar. If you didn't have a mind to guard it, it's going to be tummy. Okay, so what's the Gemara's question? So the Gemara's question is like this. One thing we see is that if you had a mind to guard something, it's going to be tar. In other words, that it goes based on your intent of guarding it, and we don't care that it was some other object. As long as you had a mind to guard it, it's going to be guarded. Because you don't see any differentiation of that. It should depend if it's what you thought it's going to be or not. That's how Rashi explains the Gemara's question. And you guard it. So the Gemara actually says that we had 3 different cases that we're asking on from the beginning of the Amid. And the Gemara says like this: that he spoke about the case of the women in the bathhouse. They switched up their clothing. They both had the same outfits, the uniforms, and they switched it up. So there I understand the Kalachas Vachas Ameris, each one says, Chaverti Eishes Hamaretz. My friend, she's a woman that's an Hamaretz. And therefore, Maschadai Timina, therefore she removed her consciousness from her garment, and there's not even a Shemira. Forget about there's no Shemira at all, because she's thinking, okay, forget about that, I'm not watching what I thought it was. She's an Amaratza. So, and therefore that's why you would consider automatically Tameh, because she's Masech Das totally. Right. I guess they're right. Chaveros I originally translated as like friends. I guess no.
She's the wife.
It wasn't friends. They were Eishes Chava.
She could be.
No, I mean, she could be, but she doesn't even know. I don't know. Yeah, she didn't know. She thinks that she's Amaratza, whatever Ma'uritz, right?
But Abdul Basadik, I mean, the story is that she's not. So
no, yeah, but first of all, it wouldn't make a difference what she be'etzin is. It would make a difference about what she thinks about her.
What the other one thinks of her?
The one that took her clothing, how she thinks about her. She thinks that she's an Amoritz. And then she's going to be Masech Das from guarding it. She doesn't know.
She doesn't know. Why is that the other one?
Because she it's Tes Chadas. It's Tes Chadas.
Who's Tes Chadas?
The owner. The owner of the garment. If someone else took her clothing, so she's saying, she's an Amoritz. And so therefore she's being Masech Das, or not, she's Tameh. She's going to be Tameh my clothing.
So even though the other one is not Masech Das, but just because she thinks she's Masech Das, or she has to know.
No, the owner is being Masech Das. Yeah, because the owner is the one who is. Yeah, so we'll see in a moment.
If you give it over to somebody else, and that
right. So that's actually the next case. So first that's this one case. We understand, says the Gemara, why that would be considered as tamei. And the Rinzim and Amram Nami, who he spoke about, let's say someone mixed up his Shabbos clothing and his weekday clothing. Kivim the Kiyam the Shabbos Abalushim Mitzvah, since the Shabbos clothing a person guards more, and he thought that this is the weekday clothing, so Masach Daitim Minayu. So essentially he's being Masir Das from the higher Shmira that he normally would watch it. So it's like as if he's not watching it at all. So I can understand why there the Shabbos Begadim is going to become tummy because you think it's your weekday clothing, but you don't watch as much as your Shabbos clothing. Rabbi Yonasan ben Elazar, this is the third case we're going to discuss, where was the case of where the first case we spoke about was when his sudar falls off his head and he asks his friend to give it to him. He says it's going to be tummy. That's what the Gemara says. Navalu shima biyadi dechaverer. What's the problem? Why are you saying it's tummy over there? Why can't you do it where the friend is holding it, but you're guarding it when the friend is holding? When you're mixing up the Shabbat clothing, when there's a different woman that she thinks is Amar, it's so fine. But here, why can't you do Shima biyad chavera? So he says Chazaka, there's a presumption in the Masham Me'ash biyad chavera. So in the Chanami, if you would ask someone to guard it for you, in the Chanami would be guarded. But when you didn't ask him, you just asked him to give it to you, there's a presumption that a person is not going to guard what his friend is holding. So that's a Rashi had explained originally when we said the case, that you're not guarding it because your friend is holding it. He's not guarding it because you didn't tell him to guard it, and you don't know if he's tummy or tar. So he's like, he doesn't know what I am, so why should I guard it? Because obviously he doesn't care about his taharas. So therefore, that's how the Gemara is explaining why these cases are going to be considered tummy, because although we see that if you guard something for the presumption that's one thing, and it turns out to be something else, like you think it's a chavish shayam, turns out it's a chavish shayam, it's going to be tar, but these cases are all different, so it doesn't have to be the thing that you thought it was going to be, but these cases are different because you're not guarding it at all, either because we have chaveri, or because you think it's your weekday clothing, it's really your Shabbos clothing, that's considered like as if you're not guarding it at that high level. And when it's the women in the bathhouse, it's like she thinks, she's amarat, so therefore forget about it, it's going to be tummy anyway. So you're not really guarding it at all, and all these cases, on some level, it's like a hesed hadas, and therefore it's going to be considered. Says Gemara, you don't protect what's in your friend's hand, but it's getintim and days, but the brayso, if someone's donkey drivers and his workers who are amaratzim or ignoramuses were tuhunin taharis, they were carrying taharis. So whole arichas and taste exactly the case. But Rashi says, for example, let's say there was wine, they were in the barrels of earthenware, and they're not touching the inside, and a kli cheres, as we know, cannot become tummy from the outside. So even though they're already at a distance from him more than the mill, doesn't make a difference. His taharis is still going to be tar. In other words, they were not concerned that maybe they touched the wine, because since he didn't tell them that he's going to be at a distance, every moment they think, oh, now he's going to come. So obviously they're not going to want to mess with his stuff because he's trying to keep it tar. One thing we see is that a person is meshama what his friend is holding. Here he has these workers holding it and he's being meshamer. They're not being meshamer, they're not amaratzim. Says the Imam, but when we continue, the Brisa says, but if he told them, L'chu go bani abe acharechem, I'm going to come after you, and he's obviously telling them he's not coming yet, the keeper in the Salma in him once that his eyes are he can't see them anymore, Taris of Tmei, then his towers are going to be tummy. Now, Rashi says not to be gurs the next words, and there's Arichas also in Taisis, Maishna Reisha, Maishna Seifa. It's not really what the point of the Gemara is. There is a sister Sugi Navi Dezar that discusses this. But Rashi says, if you're going to be gurs, what's in the Reisha, what's in the Seifa? What the Gemara means to say is, and if you're going to think to say that a person does not guard what's in his friend's hand, then why is the Reisha different than the Seifa? Then why would we say in the Reisha that it's going to be Tahar? Seifa I would understand, but how would you understand the Reisha? Why is it going to be Tahar? Says the Gemara, Mitzvah Nafcha, says, no, the truth is I can tell you that a person does not guard what's in his friend's hand, as we said on Amid Aleph. And that's why we said the case of asking someone to pick up the kappa, which is going to be tummy. But here, the Reisha, that you don't really need shimur. Because you're right, you cannot be misham yad chaver, but you don't need shimur. Because even if they touched it, it wouldn't bother him. Why not? They're amaratzim. He made him go into the mikvah. He purified his donkey drivers and his workers for this purpose. So therefore, he's going to remain taught. So that's the case. How do you understand the sefer then? Then why, if he told them, look, you guys go, I'll come later, why is he going to become tummy? Says the Gemara, it's not because themselves, because they're tar. It's because Namoritz doesn't bother by his friend. He's gonna be, hey, what's going on? And his friends are gonna be there. They say, hey, what you got over there? And the guy, the Amoritz's friend, is gonna stick his hand in, and that's why it's gonna become tummy. Says the Gemara, he said, why? How do you understand the Reisha? Why is that gonna remain tar? No, because that's bebolem derech hakolosim. That's where the owner could come on them suddenly through a shortcut that they're not going to realize, and they're afraid of him, and therefore they're not going to let their friend stick their hand. Hey, buddy, hey, my boss is right here. I'm going to get fired from my job, so he's not going to let them touch. So that's case safe enough. And they want to say the same thing by the Sefer also. Even though he says you guys go and I'll come later, maybe he's going to get a shortcut. He says no, since he told them you guys go and I'll come after you. They're relying on the fact that he's not going to be around for a while. And they're not afraid that he's going to come and bust them. Therefore, they're going to let their friends who are tummy touch this up and make it tummy. But therefore, but when we said that when it's biyat chaveira, the truth is the person is not mishamer, as we said on Amud Aleph. Why in the case of the Reisha that when the workers are even a mil away, it's going to be tar. Who's guarding it? No one's guarding it. It doesn't have to be guarded because the Amaratzim were toivel. Which with other people, that we're not concerned about. Other people, you don't need a shima. It's not considered a shima. We're not concerned about other people because they would be afraid of their boss busting them at any second. Hadloch in Darshan, we shall return to the second parak, this is Chagigah, parak in Darshan, that spoke about primarily the carbon Chagigah, and of course the sugya of Tumatar, which we started, which in that way continue with the third parak, parak Chayim B'Kodesh, which continues on the theme that we mentioned in the previous Mishnah, that we differentiate between levels of Chulin, Meiser, and Truma, and Kodshim, and Paraduma waters. Here the Mishnah mentions Chayim B'Kodesh B'Truma, as Tosfos points out, as we'll see later on, either 10 or 11 levels of Kodshim that have stringency over that of Truma. Tosfos does ask that there seems to be two cases from our previous Mishnah that we didn't mention. Tosfos says because they're not what's called Darder de Tuma. They're not really from a suspicion of Tuma, and therefore we don't mention them, although they are also going to be mentioned as a stringency of Kodshim over Truma. But be that as an A, says the Mishnah Chayim B'Kodesh B'Truma. The following are stringencies that Kodshim have over Truma. Number one, and each one of these are very sophisticated. But for today's Daf, we're just doing the Mishnah, explaining these 10, 11 cases. The first one is Shemad Bilin Kelim B'Teich Kelim. The halacha is that you could taivel one cup inside of another cup, a bowl and a bowl, a vessel and a vessel, that both are tamei, the truma, for truma. Avaloi l'kaidish. But for Kodshim, the Gemara is going to explain why you cannot taivel one bowl inside another bowl. Case number two. If you have a vessel that's has fit for utilizing, there's many different parts to a vessel. You have a charayim, you have the back. You have a teich, you have the inside. You have a beisat tzvita, which is the place where you hold on to it. Each one is considered its own independent utility as its own vessel. That's regarding bitruma. Meaning, if one of these parts of the vessel become tamei, the other part does not automatically become tamei. And as the Gemara is going to explain, obviously regular tumah deraisa, once a part of a clay becomes tamei, the whole thing becomes tamei. We're talking about regarding rabbinic tumah. Regarding rabbinic tumah, that we have the leniency that we're saying that regarding truma, the different parts are going to have different halachas. But not by Kodshim. If one of these parts become tamei, the whole vessel will become tamei regarding the laws of Kodshim. Case number three. Hanoise es hamedras. If someone is carrying a medras, let's say a shoe of a zav, right? A shoe, a zav is definitely what he steps on, and that's medras. The zav, whatever he sits on, lays on, puts his body weight, becomes a medras. Let's say someone's carrying a medras. Noise es a truma. At the same time, he could carry truma in a barrel of earthenware, where he's not touching in the ear space, and the kli charos does not become tummy from the outside. But regarding Kodshim, you cannot hold the shoe of the zav at the same time as holding a barrel of Kodshim. And the Gemara is going to explain the reason for that. Case number four, similar to like the previous Mishnah. Big day oichle truma, the garments of those who eat truma, if medrash l'kodesh, is automatically considered as a medrash, as it was stepped on by his wife that's a nida, for those who are careful for the level of Kodshim. Additionally, number five, loikimidus hakodesh, the attributes we have for Kodshim, which is regards to the laws of chatzitza, of the tefillah, is not like that of midas hadshuma. It's not like that of how we treat that of truma. How so? Sheba kodesh, because regarding Kodshim, if there's a garment that's tummy, it's coming to taivel it. So if it's knotted, The halacha is first you have to be matir. You have to untie the knots, because that's similar to like being chatzitza. And umenagiv. If it's moist, if it's wet, you have to dry it first, and then only then umatvel, then you could table it. And then when you're done, then you could tie it back again. Again, that's all because it's like similar to chatzitza. It's not getting all the way in to the garment. But a b'truma, if you want it to be knotted, you could actually be kosher to knot it, then you could table it. That's another stringency that kachim has over truma. Number 6, kelim hanigmorim b'tahara. A vessel that was finished in a state of purity. This points out, we're talking about nigmorim, not nasim, because when it's finished is when it's able to be mekabel tumah. So the person was very careful when it was time to finish the garment, when it becomes a beged that fits the mekabel tumah. So tzrichin tefil l'kodesh. You still have, even though you were careful, you made sure it was never tamei, you still have to title it if you want to use it for kachin. I think Moshe explained the reason why. Although the truma, but not for truma, because why should you have to title it? You made sure it never became tamei when you were finishing the garment. Case number 7. Hakli mitzadav mash b'toichel kodesh. A vessel combines whatever's inside of it for the laws of kachin. Meaning, if there's a lot of food items in one vessel, and the tamei person touches one of them, the vessel combines them all to be like one piece, and they all become tamei. But we don't have the halacha regarding truma. Rather, the one that you touch becomes a rishon, the one that touches that piece becomes a sheni, the one that touches that one becomes a shlishi, and the rest are tar. Case number 8, a revi b'kodesh pasal. A kachim could become a 4th degree of tumah, and again that just becomes like we call pasal. It doesn't invalidate anything else. But by shlishi b'truma, a shlishi could only become a truma and not a revi. Case number 9, b'truma imnit mezachon yadav, if one of his hands become tamei, which obviously that's a rabbinic tumah, which only contaminates the hands and not the body. So chaver tar, the other hand remains tar. But b'kodesh we're going to catch him. No, matbel shtehen. You're going to have to toivel, because like we said, the stringent b'kachim is it's not enough to wash it. You have to toivel the hands, and both have to be toivel. Because the hand contaminates the other one. Run laws of kachim, abla b'truma, not regarding truma. Case number 10 is eichlin neguvim. You could eat food items that were always dried, meaning they never became wet with one of the 7 liquids, it never became susceptible for tumah. You could eat it b'yadayim masayabos, with tamei hands, meaning which tamei hands are what we call a sheni. You could eat that b'truma when you're eating truma. Why? Because even the truma could become a shlishi, but it doesn't make a difference. The food item was never huchshel l'kabel tumah, so it's not going to become invalidated with the tamei hands touching the truma item because they were never moist. But not regarding kachim, as the Gemara is going to explain why would we say it's problematic by kachim. I will continue to have case number 11. Ha'ainin is someone whose relative died that day, but as Rashi points out, he didn't become tamei with his mess. He just lost his relative that day. And mechusik kippur, someone who's lacking atonement, for example, a zav, who taibled on the 7th day for his shiva nikiyim, and he had sundown, and the next day he's called mechusik kippurim because the completion of his purification depends on his carbon, and he didn't bring it yet. So these two individuals, when they finish, when they're done with their aninus and their mechusik kippurim, tzrichin tvi l'kodesh. They have taivel after they bring their carbon. If they want to eat kachim, they have to taivel. And again, the Gemara is going to explain what would be the reason for that. What shaykh is their tar? They already taiveled yesterday. But that halacha would not be true regarding truma. Thank you to any time for hosting us.